Good morning from the city of Ponta Delgada here in the Azores Islands. This beautiful city is the capital of the Azores Islands. Now most people come here to enjoy the beautiful architecture or take in the stunning natural landscapes or even indulge in the local produce. But few people actually know that the Azores were the site of a bloody and vicious struggle for imperial supremacy. Join me as we explore massive fortresses, picturesque beaches, and abandoned battlefields, all on our quest to uncover the final stronghold of the Portuguese Empire. Now, the first thing I want to do is get some shade and put on some sunscreen because the sun is hitting. Got that good old Nivea sun, kids. I still have the mental maturity of a 12-year-old, so it should be perfect for me. Let's try and find a little spot to sit down here. The year is 1580 and the empires of Spain and Portugal are embroiled in a nasty succession war. On one side you have King Philip II of Spain, who is a formidable yet paranoid man at the head of a very powerful kingdom. On the other we have António, Prior of Crato, a Portuguese nobleman. Both claim that they're the rightful king of Portugal, but unfortunately for António, King Philip II of Spain invades Portugal and forces him to flee right here to the Azores Islands. But Philip II isn't happy. He wants the entire Portuguese Empire to be conquered, and that includes the Azores. So he orders an armada to assemble and prepare to invade the Azores Islands. Now, in the previous episode, which, by the way, I recommend you'd watch first before you watch this one, I'll just link it in the description below. Go watch that episode first, but you better come back and watch this after. Don't just ditch me like that. Now, in the previous episode, we followed in the footsteps of the ill-fated Spanish invasion and the legendary defeat the Spanish forces suffered at the Battle of Salga on Terceira Island when the Portuguese forces unleashed a herd of half-mad cows and bulls that almost essentially exterminated the Spanish forces. While the Portuguese celebrate their triumph, Philip II of Spain isn't waiting around, and he's preparing to strike back, this time with overwhelming force. And this is where we left off in the year 1582, with the Portuguese firmly entrenched here in the Azores. Now António is busy touring France and England in order to gain support for his cause. He has sympathies with both Queen Elizabeth I of England and Queen Catherine de' Medici of France, but Catherine de' Medici is really the one who has a particular interest in weakening Philip II of Spain. Now, in exchange for the sale of some of the crown jewels of Portugal that António still has in his possession, she agrees to give António a fleet under the command of a mercenary admiral, a Florentine by the name of Filippo Strozzi, and both make their way back to the Azores Islands from France. However, what they don't know is that Philip II of Spain is aware they're on their way back to the Azores, and he orders famous Spanish Admiral Álvaro de Bazan to assemble a fleet in order to intercept and defeat Filippo and António in battle. War is returned to the Azores. I don't know if you can make out that fort over there. We're gonna go check that out in just a second. But first, let's make our way back into the historic center of this ancient city and go check it out. I love the cobblestones here on the pavements. Look at this. Would not have this in Canada or the US, I think. They have a statue here of Gonçalo Vero Cabral, who was a Portuguese monk, an explorer, who was credited with the discovery of the Azores Islands in 1431. A pretty important person, and that's why they have a statue of him up here. It's competition. These are the iconic city gates of Ponta Delgada over here, the Porta Cidade. Let's keep making our way into the old town here and try and see if we can check out the city hall just over here. They have a little bell tower up there. Let's see if we can maybe get up there. Let's go check it out. Hello. Can I just go upstairs?
Where you come from?
Canada.
Yes.
Does it depend where I come from? If I come from some certain places?
Statistics.
Okay. What country do most people come from?
United States.
U.S.
Spain.
Okay. Germany. Canada? Yeah? Some Canadians? Okay, well, one more Canadian then. These would have been old, medieval bell towers. And these small stone staircases here. They go all the way up. These bell towers, and these were, typical. You find these in all kind of the European towns. They would ring the bells, and this would indicate curfew, when to go to sleep. It would indicate things like the closing of all the activities of the markets, the taverns, the market, the shops, the stalls. It could also indicate things like sessions of the town hall, fires throughout the city, prisoner escapes, attacks, all sorts of alerts. I mean, this was essentially the modern day communication tower, your comms tower.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And they have big gaps in the stone here. Look at this. You miss your step, your foot's ending up in a different dimension. We have the bells over here, as you can see. 1, 2. This is a big one over here. 3, and then 4. And so this is where they would come up. They would walk up all those stairs, and they'd come and they'd ring the big city bells to indicate the announcements that they were going to be making for the day. Things like the different hours of the day, the matins, which are the morning prayers, the vespers, which are the evening prayers, and then of course the curfews and all sorts of other announcements. I mean, no wonder everybody back then was skinny and in pretty good shape, because if you had to do that multiple times a day, climb those stairs up and down, there's your fitness for you. It's so tight here. Got a great view of the entire city from up here. The port over there. You have the main church or cathedral. I'm not sure which one it is. It's a square down there. You have the hills, the rolling, lush green hills of the Azores out in the distance. Wasn't sure if I was gonna fit through with all the pastries I've been eating. Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you. Have a good day. Let's make our way over to the Forte dos Salbras, the fort of Ponte Delgada. The Military Museum of the Azores at the fort. That's what we're gonna go check out. So hopefully they have some cool stuff over there. I'm sure they will. They say it's 22 degrees on the weather app, but it's hitting. It feels like 25, 26 minimum here. It's a It's a pretty heavy heat. Let's hope there's some more shade in the Forte dos Saubras. A little water fountain as well here, which could be very nice. Let's hope it works. Okay. Let's focus on the fort, because that's where our story continues. So let's head inside.
You're from America, right?
I'm from Canada.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you have a European passport?
I do.
Oh.
Yeah.
Best of both
Does
worlds.
that change the price?
If you were 65, no way they wouldn't. You have to be Portuguese, not French. Sorry.
You guys don't really like the French, do you?
But you guys won the World Cup.
2018.
Yeah, dude, that was huge. Did you party in that day?
It was crazy.
It was absolutely. People went crazy on the streets.
Yeah, they were going insane.
Insane, dude. I cared back in the day because I used to bet a lot of money on soccer, you know. So that's why I actually cared that Portugal won the Euro.
The Euro, yeah.
You know, I drank a lot, but I don't regret it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't mind the hangover the next day. I had.
You have to.
Fun. Feel free to film, take pictures, do whatever you want.
All good. Thank you very much. Good experience with the Portuguese military so far. They have a little section over here with all sorts of vehicles and cannons, just open air here. Look at this. Nothing gets me more excited than a bunch of cannons and cannons on vehicles. You got all sorts of stuff just lying around here. Unimog transport vehicles here. Look at this. Reliable things that would have been used during the Ultramarine War. You have some 40mm Bofors anti-aircraft cannons here. This one's actually made in Canada. Look at this. Made in Canada by Otis Fensum Elevator Company. Otis Elevators. Next time you take an Otis elevator in Canada, which a lot of them are, you'll know that Otis also made anti-aircraft guns. These were extremely reliable cannons, the Bofors 40mm, which were originally Swedish, but they licensed them out so all the countries could make their own derivatives. These were used extensively during the Second World War on ships, on land alike. They were so reliable and so good that, you know, most countries still were using them by the 1970s here, they say. What are you doing if I pull up in front of your crib in this? Hide your wife, hide your lady. Because I'm about to pull up. Look at this bad boy. Quadruple 20mm anti-aircraft cannon here. The person goes right over here and you just push the armor plating down to close them in. Could definitely use one for my apartment whenever my upstairs neighbors are getting out and noisy. You just fire off a little burst from your quadruple 20mm cannon, armored. I think that would calm them down. It's got a little mini tube. Cute little boy. Very practical. Have one of those if you ever require one. Underground tunnels here that go into the walls of the fort. And then this would have been where they had guard posts, such as the one we're in right now. Look at this. Had a machine gun over here in placement. Obviously, when this fort was constructed, I'm not sure when the fort was constructed. I haven't checked my history yet. I'm guessing it's probably 16th century. Probably would not have had automatic machine guns. It's so cool in here. Let's check out what's over here. These tunnels were all built during the Second World War. Here in the fort, they modified the fort to build these protected tunnels and bunkers inside, of course, in anticipation of an invasion. Now, officially, Portugal was a neutral country during the Second World War. It was under the Estadio Novo military dictatorship, and it maintained a neutrality. However, it did tend to side more with the Allies, so they were a lot more accommodating to the British and American forces who had bases here in the Azores. Probably the right decision in the long term. just walk into the Regent battery room. This is the main underground battery, if you will, of the fort that's facing the port. It's facing the ocean. The main gun emplacements over here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and probably a couple more on the other side. 6, 7, 8, or 10. This would have been the main battery of the fort. Any enemy fleet trying to come into the port would have had to pass by the Regent's battery, the main battery. They have all sorts of swords and bayonets here. This one right here, Kukri, the Gurkha sword. The Gurkhas, of course, fierce warriors that still fight to this day for the British Army. And they have their Kukris, deadly, deadly, nasty weapons that the Gurkhas are famous for wielding with a lot of efficiency. Now, this is what the forces would mainly have been equipped with in our time period for our story. Firearms, again, were still fairly rare. Most of the forces would have been equipped with swords and with halberds, and then with some good old armor over here. Obviously not, we're not talking about medieval knight, full body armor, but they would still have been armored and fighting mainly with swords and halberds and pikes. Look at this over here. They have some helmets. I don't know if you can see that symbol. I'm not going to say what it is because I'll probably get demonetized, and just for showing it as well, probably. And then on this side, I wonder where they got that one from. And over here you have the firearm section lined up over here. Now, it seems the Portuguese army got their arms from pretty much all over the place here. The 20th century, which would have been during the Second World War, they had German Mausers, and they had Lee Enfields, which were the British World War II gun. Some Austrian Mannlicher, which were the Austrian World War II guns. So, kind of all over the place. That's what the Portuguese National Republican Guard would be wearing. And it's extremely reminiscent, of course, of the German pike helmet. Let's try and make our way out now to the coastal ramparts, batteries up top, so we can set up and continue our story out there. The ocean is what interests us, because out there in the ocean, on the other side, right in front of Ponta Delgada, is where the forces of Spain and Portugal meet for the naval Battle of Ponta Delgada. Let's go and check it out. Got 2 batteries over here, 105 millimeter batteries that would have been installed, of course, retroactively. They're collecting cobwebs now. I don't know if they were ever fired or ever used. I don't know if Ponta Delgada was ever attacked, maybe by U-boats or something, but they're still here. Now, as I had mentioned earlier, the 2 fleets are on a collision course. The Portuguese and their French allies, they make it back just in time to the Azores. But the Spanish are hot on their heels. And the 2 fleets just meet south of here, out there in the ocean, in what has become known as the Battle of Ponta Delgada. Now, the Spanish galleons out there, they align themselves in a line abreast, which means they are just side by side by side by side, because they carry all their cannons in the front of their ships. The Portuguese and the French don't necessarily carry their cannons in the front of their ships. They also have some on the sides. And they also outnumber the Spanish 2-1. And so they launch into an attack right away. Smoke and chaos engulf the sea as the French and Portuguese ships start pounding the Spaniards with artillery fire, and they even board multiple Spanish galleons. See, the French ships are a lot smaller, a lot more nimble, so they group up in groups of 4 and they start attacking individually the slow, big, cumbersome Spanish galleons. But the Spanish keep resisting, and soon the winds, literally and figuratively, start to turn. Admiral Álvaro de Bazan, who is the Spanish commander, sees the flagship of the mercenary Florentine Admiral Filippo Strozzi, who is the commander of the French-Portuguese fleet, and he goes straight for the flagship, pounding her with artillery fire until she's about to sink. Now, see, the Portuguese, they use a more novel approach to naval combat. They prioritize artillery fire as a means to achieve victory. But the Spanish, they still focus on the traditional method of naval combat, which is focused on boarding as opposed to artillery. Artillery is more a preliminary, and then you really try and board the ships, and boarding is how you win the combat. And so these big, cumbersome Spanish galleons, they approach the Portuguese ships, and they're filled to the brim with loads and loads of highly trained Marines. And so when they approach and get boarded, they actually find it to be quite easy to repulse the Portuguese attacks, because the Portuguese have chosen to focus more on artillery as opposed to naval combat. By the end of the 5-hour battle, António and his Franco-Portuguese fleet have lost 10 ships and over 1,000 men killed. The unfortunate mercenary Admiral Filippo Strozzi, who commanded his fleet, is captured and killed by Álvaro de Bazan, who reportedly wounds him until he is about to die, then throws him overboard while he is still breathing. Men over 17 who are captured are put to death as pirates, a cruel sentence that surprises many of the Spanish captains. The Spanish have suffered severe damage, but they have won a truly massive victory. When Álvaro de Bazan returns to Spain, the entire country celebrates. Many even take to spitting in the faces of any Frenchmen they cross in the street, which I myself, being French, think is a fairly understandable reaction. The Spanish now control the seas, and that isn't good news for our friend António. He flees to the island of Terceira, where he now starts reinforcing his position with fresh Portuguese, English, and French troops. Let's make our way back down now to our car and try and get somewhere with a bit more of a vantage point, so we can get a nice view of the city of Ponta Delgada, and we can wrap up this part of our story here on São Miguel Island. They explained that, very interesting, that during 1937 to about 1943, before relations thawed with the British and the US, the main supply of armament to the Portuguese army came from Germany. So that's why there were so many German weapons, German Mausers, MGs, machine guns, and all sorts of stuff. Let's try and find ourselves a little cafe or something. Grab a little bite. The cheese bacon camovo.
Okay.
And do you have lemonade? A lemonade? Lemonade? No? Okay. Alright, just had a nice local delicacy called a hamburger, and now let's make our way back through the old town towards our car. We aren't going to be using that mode of transportation. Instead of having white horses, we have ourselves a nice white Mitsubishi Space Star. I think it has more than 2 horsepower though, so we should be good. We have entered the Space Star. We are ready to go to space and the stars. This is the Mitsubishi Space Star. I don't know why I'm speaking with a German accent. It's a Japanese car. A nice historic town, Ponta Delgada, but it is a lot more touristy. It's probably the most touristic destination in the Azores. Tourists all over the place. And I hate tourists. I am one myself, but still. So let's try and head out a bit inland, just a little bit, so we can get a nice view of the city of Ponta Delgada, and we'll be able to wrap up the chapter, this chapter of our story on São Miguel. Let's go. Alright, I have found something quite interesting. I was checking out Google Maps and I saw that there was a coastal artillery battery somewhere in the hills here overlooking the city. And try and find this coastal battery. Let's go. I think there's a pathway over here. Let's go check it out. This artillery battery is not marked on any maps. There are no paths that lead to it. So we're kind of gonna have to kind of freestyle this and see if we can find a way to get around the hill here. Just walking here and I've stumbled on something interesting. Look at this. Bilheteira, which is the ticket office. I don't know where we are. Is this some sort of like old stadium or something? They have the lights up there. All the spotlights. I think this might be an old footy stadium or something. Let's go check this out. This could be cool. An old abandoned sports stadium here. Just hidden away in the middle of nowhere. Club União Micalense. I don't know if we're supposed to be here. They've reconverted this entire stadium into farming land. Look at that. You have all the bleachers over here, and then look, the pitch is being reconverted into pastures, essentially. Over there you have the main stand. You still have the lights, the spotlights. And they've reconverted all of it. It's very cool. And see if we can maybe get around. There's just something inherently cool about abandoned places that have been reconverted or taken over by vegetation and by nature, such as this big light column over here. Spotlight column. It's just inherently cool. I think I've been spotted. I've been called over by the farmer, I think. Hopefully he knows where this is, or I don't get kicked off. Let's see. Private, this is private. Okay, no worries. Is this all private land on the hill, or?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Yeah. So this is your farm then? Okay, company, yes,
yeah,
company,
yeah,
yes.
Company.
And so you work for company,
yes,
okay.
Yeah, work for the company.
Okay. This was a football field, yes.
Yeah.
And so you reconvert this, or?
The bank took this because the club had some debt, so this was abandoned. Club still exists, but don't play here anymore.
They have a stadium, yes, okay.
Yeah, they had great conditions here.
Okay. You came to see them here play the team?
I saw on the television.
Okay.
I don't came here.
Yes.
They are a well-known team here. Where are you from?
I'm from Canada. Cool.
I went there.
Okay, you went to Toronto.
Yeah.
Okay, how did you like it?
Nothing compared to this. This is more calm.
But do you prefer Toronto or do you prefer calm?
I prefer calm.
You prefer?
There you go. Well, 10 minutes you're everywhere.
Yeah.
But not the. Oh, it's a nice place, but not to live.
Well, thank you very much. What was your name? Sébastien.
From Quebec.
No, but I live there. I live in Montreal, and when I speak in English, I say I'm Canadian. When I speak in French, I say I'm French.
Okay.
Well, thanks for the help.
Okay.
Have a good day. Yes, thank you again. Bye. That was nice of him. Well, that was the wrong way. private land. At least we got to see the cool stadium. Get to talk to Miguel. Let's make our way back to the car. Maybe go around the mountain. Try and maybe see if there's a path from another side here from the bottom. Let's hop back in the car. Low aura moment. Stopped at the bottom, right next to the highway here. I think there might be a path. I'm just gonna go up by foot because I can't really take the car anymore. I don't know where that leads, but let's hope that it leads us up this hill so we can just find this bloody naval battery and just sit down. I really have no clue where the hell I am right now and where the hell I'm going. This could be private land for all I know. I just want to get up this hill. I think we may have just found a way. Nice view though. You definitely won't have any tourists up there. That's for sure. Looks like I have some company over here. Hello. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hello. Probably don't speak English. I don't really see where the path continues. I think I found it. I think I may have just pulled this one out of the bag. That over there. If you can't spot it from here, then that means I am a goat. Look where we are though. Would you look at what we got over here? I spy with my little eye the unmistakable shape of a naval battery. It's just lying here completely abandoned. I don't know when this was installed, obviously. I'm guessing around the Second World War or something. It's a pretty big caliber right there. I mean, if I take a guess, that's at least 120 millimeter, if not more, which is a pretty big caliber. But they would have installed these to protect the coast, the harbor. I'm assuming there were 3 or 4 cannons in the battery. Look at this, there's one right here as well. Third cannon all the way over there as well. These are big boys. These are big guns over here. Look at this. Pointed right out to the coast of Ponta Delgada of São Miguel Island, where we are right now, to protect the coast from any enemy invasions. These would really have been a serious threat. I don't know if they ever fired a shot. I doubt it, because I don't think Ponta Delgada was ever attacked during the Second World War, but we're being attacked. Do you hear that? To the cannons. This is the kind of stuff I love, just stumbling across these abandoned, forgotten places that are just brimming with history. I mean, most people would look at this and think it's just a rusty piece of junk. There's just something inherently fascinating to me about these little pieces of history that we've kind of sprinkled all over our cities, our lands, our pastures, our fields, and that we forget about. These wouldn't be here if it weren't for a conscious decision to put them here, a decision that has serious consequences. If it weren't for the Second World War, these wouldn't be here in the middle of this random field overlooking the city of Ponta Delgada. People say that history is so boring. Well, look around you. Look around you. Look at these little sprinklings of history that exist all around you in the most innocuous and random of places, you will find the most interesting bits of history. But enough of my musings and ramblings, let's get back to why I brought you here. After the Spanish victory at the naval battle of Punta Delgada, Philip II of Spain can feel that he is finally within touching distance of defeating that pesky António and his Azores once and for all. He orders his trusted admiral Álvaro de Bazan to prepare a monumental amphibious invasion force. We're talking about 15,000 men on 100 ships, including troop transports, landing craft, galleons, and fighting galleys. Philip II remembers what happened at the Battle of Salga just 1 year prior, and this time he isn't taking any risks. His aim is simple: to land this overwhelming force on the island of Terceira, where António and his troops are entrenching and preparing themselves, and to crush this final remaining stronghold of the Portuguese Empire once and for all. It's time to hop in the plane, because we're heading to the beautiful island of Terceira. We've made it! Welcome back, I should say, to Angra do Heroísmo, the main city here on the island of Terceira. For those of you who saw the previous episode, you will recognize this place because it was the site of the previous failed Spanish invasion of 1581. Well, just 2 years later, the situation has changed dramatically for António. Terceira, this island over here, is pretty much his last remaining stronghold, his only base of support. Here in the city of Angra do Heroísmo, António organizes the raising of troops, of militia, and the administration of the island's defense. Luckily for António, he can count on some substantial support from French Queen Catherine de Medici, who sends António 1,200 French and 400 English soldiers under the command of Aymar de Chast, who takes over the overall command of the defense of the island. Now, while the local Portuguese militia troops are of pretty low quality, these French and English troops are veterans, and they have a lot of experience. Now, the Portuguese, they expect the Spaniards to land right over here at the main harbor of Angra do Heroísmo. But the new French commander, Aymar de Chast, comes in and he completely changes the strategy. Instead, he chooses to increase the fortifications on the southern, most exposed side of the island by building a series of small forts, trenches and outposts manned with cannons and troops. As it turns out, it's a very smart decision. Just right here on the coast. Beautiful little chapel. Closed, unfortunately, but... Now the Spanish, under the command of good old Admiral Álvaro de Bazan, have decided not to land in Angra do Heroísmo over there, mainly because of the natural defenses the Portuguese already have in place, especially the fort of Saint Sebastian. It's over there. Instead, they have chosen to try another risky amphibious landing on a beach just 15 kilometers to the east of Angra do Heroísmo. Let's hop in the car and head over to the beach. The foliage here is so dense and tropical, quasi-tropical, and yet we're in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Unique characteristic of the Azores, this intermingling of the lush tropical vegetation on the lower levels of the land, and once you get up to the higher levels you have a lot of pine forests and pine trees and forests that remind me of the Canadian wild, British Columbia, and the Canadian north and west. So it's a very interesting mix. "12 bells," which means of course that it is 12 p.m. Before we do go to the beach, I do want to check out that fortress, the fort of Saint Sebastian. See if we can try and get in there. It's been reconverted into a hotel from what I understand, but I definitely want to go check that out. If you were wondering why I'm not going to be walking through the city of Angra, it's because I already did that. But if you do want to see what the beautiful UNESCO World Heritage Site of Angra do Heroísmo looks like, I recommend you check out my previous episode where I had a bit more of a walkthrough of the city and explored. I'll link it up in the description. And one thing I do love about this big mount over here is that it's also a nature reserve. They have a cat colony here. You walk around, there's cats giving you a little attitude with their little stare. Chickens and cocks running around, all sorts of birds and lizards, and as you can hear, it's a very animated place. All right, let's hop back in the car. Time to head off and explore the fort of San Sebastian. Check out this fort. Dutch ship from Rotterdam, the Oosterschelde. Beautiful ship. And then here's the fort. It's obviously not as big or imposing as the St. John Baptist fortress that we visited last episode. It's still a pretty big fort here. Well, as you can see, the courtyard is now a hotel space, pretty luxurious hotel. I wouldn't mind staying here, getting a nice little room here and enjoying the view of the bay here. I make my way around. They have a nice pool space here with a little jacuzzi just to my right. Wouldn't mind going for a little dip myself. Not sure if I'm allowed to, considering I'm not really a guest here, but ain't nobody gonna stop me. I made my way up into one of the watchtowers here, and you can see from here the entire view of the port as well as the bastions. Right down there, over there, they would have placed powerful artillery pieces, and the fire from Fort San Sebastian would have crossed with that from the fort right across from us, which is of course the fort of St. John the Baptist. The port was very well protected, which means that Admiral Álvaro de Bazan, when he was planning his invasion, chose not to come here for obvious reasons. Let's make our way back down to the car and head off to the beach. Time to go on a nice coastal drive down the Terceira coast, east 15 kilometers and try and find that beach where Álvaro de Bazán is preparing his surprise landing. I've just stopped here quickly because we're passing by a spot that you may recognize, the beach of Salga. The beach here was, of course, the site of the previous attempted Spanish invasion 2 years prior, as I covered in the previous episode of the show. The Portuguese won a famous victory that they still celebrate and commemorate to this day, right here on the beach at Salga, as Admiral Álvaro de Bazán and his ships were making their way out there in the coast past the beach here at Salga. They would have remembered what happened to their comrades. I would go for a little dip. Be a bit chilly. This may be a semi-tropical climate here in the Azores, but trust me, the ocean is not very warm. All right, let's keep making our way down the coastal road here until we can find this elusive beach. There's a little trail over here. Let's see if we can maybe head towards the coast. It's time to switch out the Ray-Bans and put on my American cop glasses. Hello, sir. The name's Officer Smith. I'm gonna get you to roll down your windows and step out the vehicle for me, please. Well, let's make our way onto this trail, this coastal trail here that goes all along the southern coast of the island of Terceira. But first, there's something that I want to go check out. Forte da Greta. Let's go check out, see what's left of the fort of Greta. I mean, if there's a fort to be checked out, you can bet your ass that I'm going to go and check it out. Look at that. And right over there is that lighthouse that we crossed while we were driving in. But I mean, you can understand why they decided to build a little fort over here, because you have terrific unobstructed views of the coastline here. Look at this. Let's see if we can find the remains of the Forte da Greta. I don't know why they named it after Greta. I don't know who Greta is. Well, I think we've made it to the fort of Greta over here, or at least what's left of it, because as you can probably see behind me, there ain't much left of poor Greta's fort over here. This would have been, of course, one of those small coastal fortifications that Aymar de Chast, who took over from António for the defense of the island, this would have been one of the small fortresses, coastal fortresses and outposts that he would have built here to maintain a watch on the southern coast of the island to make sure the Spanish couldn't invade without being detected. These stones that are used to build the forts, well, at least what's left of the fort walls here, these are all tuff, T-U-F-F, which is volcanic stone. The Azores are a very volcanic island, so it makes sense that they would use the local stone here, keep the costs low. Trust me, if we try to build that nowadays, a little fort like that, probably between $500 to $1 billion. And that's not even taking into account the marketing costs for the project. Now, before we launch ourselves onto this coastal trail here, grab a little something to eat. So we're here right now, and we just saw the Greta Fort. Then all here you have these small little forts. another fort. We got to go all the way up to this fort over here, and check out all these forts. And one of these beaches here is going to be where the Spanish are trying to land. The snacks have been secured. Let's try and find a little spot where we can chow down. People say that anymore. Chow down. Have a bit of chow. There aren't any tables around here. Nothing except for this. We're gonna talk about this in just a second, but for the time being, I'm gonna use this bad boy as a little table. All right, on the menu today we have sandwiches. Yay! What else? What else did you expect? Now you're probably wondering how am I gonna spread this delightful mustard on my bread without a spoon. Spoon, pocket knife, and it has perfectly balanced, as all things should be. Mayonnaise. It's time to cheese it up, my dog. Cheese it up, my dog. Of course, the Azores, as I was saying in last episode, replay that catch. They're known for their dairy. Every island produces its milk, its cheese, and its butter. Cheese it up, cheese it up. Got a bit of local ham and some nice salami over here. Salami. Man, food just got me acting up. Mother trucker. A little bit of ham in here as well. Pickles. Pick it up, pick it up. Pickle 3 and pickle 4. Houston, this is command. All pickles are ready for launch. I'm kind of hungry right now. Bon appetit. Done. That's what's up. And let's pack up and head down towards the beach. It's the early hours of the 26th of July, 1583, exactly 1 year after the Spanish victory at the naval battle of Punta Delgada. And just out there, 12 big Spanish galleys unload 4,500 eager Spanish soldiers who land on this beach right over here. The first wave is led in person by Admiral Álvaro de Bazan. The beach over here is defended by that fort, or at least what's left of it. You can see the big slabs in the water over there, and by the Forte da Greta that we just came from. The fort of St. Catherine is the major one. When they see the Spanish forces advancing, they open fire with the fort's artillery. The final battle for the fate of the Portuguese Empire has just begun. The azuelo I was just eating my delectable lunch on over here depicts the invasion over here. As you can see, you see the Spanish Armada, the fleet over here, as they send their troops in, landing on the bay where we are right now and forming up in their tercios, their squares, as they repel the Portuguese attacks. Let's keep making our way down and follow the trail that leads us, the coastal trail that leads us all along this southern coast. Let's try and stay away from the water as much as we can as we pass by the remnants of the Santa Catarina fort over here. That's all that's left of it, are these big slabs of tuff. Oh my days. Woo! As I mentioned, Admiral Álvaro de Bazan leading from the front, and its flagship passes so close to the fort right here that the defenders who are stationed, the garrison, can actually start firing at him with their arquebuses. Seeing this annoyance, Admiral de Bazan turns his ship and fires all his cannons at the fort of Santa Catarina, and he quickly silences it. Meanwhile, here on the beach, Spanish landing craft start to unload their troops while the Portuguese and the French defenders are firing at them. These are Spanish tercios. They're very well-disciplined, experienced units, and Bazan also can count on mercenary forces. They have German, Italian, and they even have Portuguese regiments. The Portuguese defenders know that they'll be in for a pretty rough time. Volleys of arquebus and cannon fire strike the advancing Spaniards. One of the first Spaniards ashore is actually Rodrigo de Cervantes, the brother of the famous Miguel de Cervantes, the author of Don Quixote, who had, of course, barely escaped with his life from the disastrous catastrophe that was the Battle of Salga. More and more Spanish forces land. They manage to bring up their artillery and they capture the fort of Santa Catarina. And Álvaro de Bazan, the Spanish commander, is pleased with his progress. However, he sees that just inland up there, Commander de Chasse, the French commander, has arrived with his Portuguese, French, and English mixed force. Bazan orders his troops to land as much material and equipment and artillery as possible to form up, to start making their way inland. The decisive confrontation of the battle is about to happen. But the story is not done yet. Let's keep making our way along the coast. See if we can find some more interesting ruins. I spy with my little eye a fortification. Right there. The fort of Bom Jesus, Good Jesus. Another one of those small coastal outposts that were built by the Portuguese and the French under de Chasse to keep a look out with a perfect view of the Caleta das Mos Bay where the Spanish landed. So let's keep making our way along this trail to see where the two sides will meet in battle. This goes up so much. Came all the way up there. I'm already gassed. And I mean, I'm not out of shape or anything. This was supposed to be a medium difficulty hike. Oh, my days. I'm sweating my ass off over here. God damn. My glasses just broke. My stupid American cop glasses just broke on me. This is more like it. Much nicer. Let's just keep it going downhill from here. One thing that I've loved about the Azores are the topography. Just some of the most interesting topography of any place I've been to. It's all fertile land, which means that they have the cows grazing. Would you just look at that? It almost makes the climb up worth it. Almost. I gotta be pretty careful here. I'm gonna keep my mouth shut. I'm gonna focus on not twisting all my ankles. Oh boy. Just going over there. All right. Just going over there, buddy. He's brown, and all the others are black and white. And they've ostracized him. They put him in the corner over here. That's disgusting, guys. Come on. It's supposed to be inclusive. We have a little abandoned house right here. All across the island, you come across these cute little, just abandoned sheds or houses or farmhouses. They're all built in this thick stone. If my eyes do not deceive me, I think I spot a little fort. Let's make our way over. I don't know if you can see it. Just right over there. Some fortifications there that are still holding up pretty well. Oh no. One last push. It's just beautiful. The issue with the Azores is that it's such a volcanic and rocky island that you don't really have any beaches here. Well, the locals just tend to go to these swimming holes, they call them, that form in the rock formations on the coast. And so they go there and they go for a swim or a dip. But you don't really have a lot of beaches here in the Azores. Hello. Okay. He's scared of me. So intimidating. He can feel my aura from here. Isn't that right, Kevin? Okay. The milk here from the Azores is probably the best milk I've ever tasted in my life. It was delicious. You can taste the grass, and you compare that to the bagged milk that Canadians are proud of. It's, look at that, still holding up. And it would have been another one of those outposts that were constructed by the Portuguese and the French along the coast here to keep a watch. Their cannons ready right there, aiming for the coast, aiming for the Spanish or for whoever they were expecting to come invade. BERIN number 10. I don't really know what that means. Maybe fort number 10? I think that's enough fort hunting for the day. Let's make our way back towards the vehicle at a moderate pace because the Spanish and Portuguese forces are mustering for battle. You may have noticed there's not really been a lot of people here. It's a very calm island, and that's one of the main attractions of the Azores. You have the same type of weather as the Caribbean, but you don't have the swaths of tourists that are just swarming all over the beach and the hiking trails and the attractions. It's still relatively unknown to the general public as a destination. Hopefully it can stay that way. I don't know if you can see that up there, but there seems to be a cute little chapel up there on the hill. Let's see if we can go up there and maybe get a nice view of the plains near the landing beach, because that's where the two sides, the Spanish and the Portuguese, meet, right here in these vast open plains. Cute little veals here, look at that. It must honestly be nice to be a cow. You know, you don't really do anything. You spend your day eating grass, you lie down, then you stand up and you eat grass, then you lie down and you eat grass lying down, then you stand up again and you eat grass, and then once in a while you need to get milked. You know, sounds like a pretty fun activity for you when you're the cow, and then you go to sleep. That's life, you know? That's it. All right, we have arrived. In the plains just behind me here, the two opposing armies form up, ready for battle. On one side, Admiral Álvaro de Bazan is leading an 11,000 strong Spanish force who line up in 3 lines. On the left, the German pikemen. On the right, the Spanish tercios. And in the center, the arquebusiers. Opposing is Aymar de Chastes's Franco-Portuguese force, who number about 10,000 troops. Their formation isn't really known, but they form up in a line opposite the Spaniards. De Chastes, seeing that the Spaniards are still forming up, orders a general full frontal assault, and the French and Portuguese troops stream down the plains, crashing into the Spanish center that's held by the arquebusiers. They advance by using the hedges and the rows for cover, popping in and popping out to fire shots with the arquebusiers at the Spanish line. It breaks the Spanish center. Seeing the imminent danger, Álvaro de Bazan orders his reserve of German pikemen to intervene and reinforce the center, and disaster is avoided. Over 1,000 men reinforce the Franco-Portuguese army, as well as wait for it, a herd of cows and bulls. That's right, the Portuguese are ready to try the same tactic that won them their historical victory at Salga over 2 years ago now. Night is already falling fast here on the plains. They've been fighting for 16 hours now, slugging it out here from the beach all the way out here into the plains. Deschastes, the French commander, decides to hold back on using the bulls and the cows, on using the herd again. And both sides retreat and rest for the night. Morning rises on the battlefield, a new day, as Aimar Deschastes, the French commander, wakes up and emerges from his tent, eager to get back and to fight the Portuguese for another day. However, as he steps out into the morning mist, he looks around and he realizes that all the Portuguese troops have fled into the mountains. He's by himself with his French forces. He's shocked, but he doesn't have the time to react because the Spaniards have assembled and they've seen the Portuguese have fled. And so very quickly they attack and they push the French forces all the way into the town over there. Let's follow the French retreat inland as we make our way up into the mountains of Terceira Island. Thirsty as hell. I've run out of water. I've used all my water, so I'm gonna hope that there's still some peach nectar left. Oh, that's so good. Let's hop in the car and head off towards the mountains as we follow the Portuguese and French retreat.
When will I return?
I saw a fountain down there. Let's go quickly fill up our water bottle. Right next to the fountain, you have this beautiful azuelo over here, depicting what I can only assume is the discovery of the Azores by the Portuguese. Before the Portuguese came to the Azores, there was no one else here. It was completely uninhabited. So the Portuguese were the first to discover it.
Daydream my way to you. Memories.
All right, we're here, a viewpoint where we can hopefully have a nice view. It's a bit rainy up here in the highlands. Ow. The conditions are completely different here from down on the coast. The coast is sunny, it's warm, not too windy up here. Lots of fog, lots of fog. It's spitting a little bit of rain up here, and it's very quite windy and a lot chillier as well. As the Spaniards keep advancing, Deschastes realizes that the battle is lost, and the French keep retreating all the way up here. The French soldiers try and dig into the mountains where they're hiding in all the way up there. Soon they mutiny against Deschastes. They don't want to fight anymore. They know the battle is lost. The official offer of surrender is signed by the forces in Angra do Heroísmo as Deschastes surrenders the Franco-Portuguese and English force. The Spanish have won a great victory. They show mercy to the French and English soldiers, but the Portuguese are treated with much less dignity, to say the very least. The battle is over. The Spanish have won, and with that, the Portuguese Empire officially ceases to exist as an independent entity, absorbed into a forced union with Philip II and Spain. Let's keep making our way to the very top of Terceira Island. It's a perfect way to close off our story today. We're gonna cut that part out. here we are. I don't know if we're really gonna see much of the famous view. I don't know if you can really hear me right now because of all the wind. So I'm gonna try and find a spot with a bit less wind. The weather here is so variable. It can change from altitudes. It can change from days. You never know what you can get here in the Azores. With the fall of Terceira Island, the Azores are now completely controlled by King Philip II of Spain. Now, you're probably asking yourselves, where the hell has António been in this story? You know, he's the contender to the throne, he's Philip II's main opponent here, and yet he's been completely absent from the story. Well, António was actually on Terceira Island. He was at Angra, but he was busy organizing the defense of the island and raising more troops, and he actually never took part in the actual fighting on the island. After his short-lived kingdom, António returns to France, where he lives in Paris for some time. However, many are still fearful of spies, Spanish or Portuguese alike, and António is soon forced to flee, where he goes to England to the court of Queen Elizabeth I, who is growing increasingly concerned about the military power of the Spanish monarchy. Unfortunately, he soon falls into poverty, and in order to make ends meet, he is forced to sell off little by little the crown jewels of Portugal that he has kept with him. But António doesn't live much longer, and he dies in Paris a poor, lonely, and forgotten man. It would take the Portuguese over 50 years to rediscover the spark of resistance and finally overthrow the Spanish. But that, my friends, is a story for another day. See you soon for some more adventures.